World leaders are gathering in New York City for the 72nd United Nations General Assembly. President Donald Trump will deliver his first speech to the world body as the international community grapples with crises ranging from nuclear and missile testing by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to ongoing civil wars in Syria and Yemen. CGTN's Nathan King is at the United Nations headquarters in New York and filed this report.
Over 100 heads of state of government will be in New York this week, including for the first time US President Donald Trump. He has often been critical of the United Nations, and all eyes will be on the General Assembly podium as he delivers his speech Tuesday.
Nobody really knows what Trump is going to do. He could give a very aggressive anti-UN speech. Equally, he could try and use this as an opportunity to build better relations with other leaders and be relatively positive.
Please raise their hand.
The United Nations security, however, has shown rare unity in recent months, passing multiple sanctions resolutions against the DPRK in response to its accelerated missile and nuclear testing. And the US will use this week to try and push for more action against Pyongyang. But experts also believe that world leaders will use this week to press the US to accept that the only solution to the DPRK crisis is diplomatic, not military.
This is more of an opportunity for a wide range of leaders, and actually especially leaders of US allies, to ram home the theme that we need a diplomatic solution to the Korean problem. And if President Trump gives even a hint that he is minded to go to war, that will really shake up a lot of his audience.
China's delegation will be led by Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who will continue to push for Beijing's plan to calm Korean tensions. The dual freeze, as it's known, aims to secure a freeze on Pyongyang's missile and nuclear tests in return for a reduction in US war games on the peninsula. It's also the first United Nations General Assembly for the new UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He is leading an organisation that is having to deal with multiple security and humanitarian crises, from intractable civil wars in Syria and Yemen, refugees in record numbers fleeing Africa, the Middle East and now Asia, as the Rohingya crisis rages in Myanmar. Myanmar's State Councillor and Foreign Minister Aung San Suu Kyi is no longer coming to the United Nations General Assembly. Other world leaders, including Russia's Vladimir Putin and Germany's Angela Merkel, will also not be in attendance in New York this week. Iran's newly re-elected President Hassan Rouhani, however, will be. He will highlight Iran's continued compliance with the historic nuclear deal, which hardliners in the Trump administration oppose. From South Sudan to Syria to the DPRK and an ambitious development agenda, never has the United Nations had so much on its plate at one time. And this week here at its headquarters will be a test of commitment by world leaders to rallying round to support the United Nations and also find common ground for global problems. Nathan King, CGTN at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
Among the leaders expected to address the Assembly later today and Wednesday are Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari and Jacob Zuma of South Africa. Joining us live from Johannesburg is Angela Coppola and Deji Badmas is in Lagos. Angela, what should we expect from President Zuma as he's set to address the UN General Assembly on Wednesday?
Well, he's most likely going to focus on emerging markets and the less developed countries and their needs. It's expected that there will also be a push to level the economic playing fields. He's likely to coordinate his speech with the AU focus, and that's on moving the developed world from a commitment to action when it comes to Agenda 2063. He obviously wants to see emerging economies treated as equals when it comes to their more developed world economic trading partners, which translates, of course, into reducing the imbalance of trade relationships and seeing those emerging economies, especially on the African continent, as more than simply natural resource exporters. So he's likely to take a continental position, a continental view in attempting to position the country, South Africa, as a continental leader, especially as South Africa is due to host the 2018 BRICS Summit in Durban. Penina?
And Deji, many people are looking forward to Buhari's speech. Some progress on the war against terror, but more needs to be done. What will be central to his address?
Well, from the Foreign Affairs Minister, what the President would be talking about, of course, he will give an update on Nigeria's fight against the Boko Haram insurgency and use the opportunity to call for more help and assistance from the international community. Also, one other important thing that the President would be talking about would be the fight against corruption. What we understand is that the President would use his speech to call for international support to check the flow of illicit funds now from Nigeria and the repatriation of the country's looted funds. So these are basically the core areas that we understand the President would be looking about. Of course, he would talk about other issues affecting the continent as well. Penina?
Angelo, back home, the President is facing a myriad of challenges. Are these likely to overshadow his speech in New York?
Well, analysts don't expect his speech to be used to highlight what are essentially internal in-country issues. He's not let the two sides of his political life affect his international speeches or his international obligations, and that's in the last 8 years. He's always at pains to separate those two, so it's unlikely to feature in his speech in any way. He will, of course, focus on those continental issues and project himself and his government as committed to a continental agenda. That's despite the upcoming ANC elective conference that's happening in December and the internal wars that have now raging between the various ANC factions as they compete for the hearts and minds of the members in the ANC who are going to elect that new leader in December. So there's that happening on the sidelines, but it won't impact on his speech at all, Penina.
And did you finally, there were high expectations when Buhari came to power, especially on security and youth empowerment. Is the mood the same today?
Well, in terms of security, everyone would tell you that this government has done very well and that it is still doing well, especially against the Boko Haram insurgency. The sect has been seriously degraded and the military has the upper hand. But when you talk about youth empowerment now or employment, that is one area that is still a very huge challenge for this government. Youth unemployment is still very high in the country. And, you know, jobs are not created as fast as they should. And, of course, not helped by the fact that the country went into recession and has just come out of it. But the government says it is doing all it can and that it just would take some time until the country makes a full rebound before we'll begin to see things take shape. But there's no question at all that the government needs to do more in terms of youth unemployment. It's still a big challenge.
Deji Badmas in Lagos and Angelo Coppola in Johannesburg, thank you both for your time.